test. What is inside of Russian mind? Maybe it is like that famous Russian nesting doll, Matryoshka, you can see on the first page of this presentation. You know that popular souvenir everybody brings from Russia. You take one, then you open it, then you find another one, then you discover another one. And if you had enough money to buy a big one, it might be 50 or more. And the same is with Russian mind. A lot of layers, a lot of different features. And hopefully today we will open a few of these Russian nesting dolls. On the left side of the first page, I placed the Russian bear, a famous Russian animal which became almost like a mascot of Russia. It's sitting on the big Russian map, huge country. Today we are going to talk about this too. And it's kind of friendly. It's jolly and friendly. And it's playing folklore instrument, accordion, one of the instruments popular in Russia. So maybe Russia is not so terrifying, maybe it's not so scary. Again, you will be judges in this. And of course, talking about Russia, we need some celebrities quotation. A lot of famous people, politicians and historians, philosophers, they said something important about Russia. And Winston Churchill once said, "I cannot forecast to you the action of Russia. It's a riddle wrapped in a mystery inside an enigma." What were the factors created that enigma? Why is it so special and unique? This has not been understood by many generations of Western Europeans and Americans. So let's try to excavate this large and deep archaeological site to extract some facts, helping us to understand the roots of Russian mentality. And of course, let's start from the very beginning. It's a very good place to start. The very beginning is the Russian map. Here you can see a big Russian map. And as you know, Russia occupies about 1/8 of the Earth's inhabited territory. Huge country, the biggest in the world. And logically, of course, it has all kinds of climate on its territory, from frozen tundra to tropics and even subtropics, which is not very well known by the foreigners. It's so big that if you travel from Moscow to Vladivostok and you can buy this train tour, it will take you about a week. And traveling by train, you will pass about 11 time zones, and you will see beautiful landscapes, and you will see Russian prairies, Russian very tall mountains, and of course Siberian forests. And this large territory, this huge empire, of course also impacted the Russian mentality. In Russian folklore about the distances in Russia, there are a lot of anecdotes and folk tales and songs. Of course, the anecdotes is the most interesting genre. For example, about Siberia. One tourist came to Siberia and he lost his way in the taiga, then Siberian forest. Fortunately, he met a local guy and asked him about the direction. He wanted to get to the nearest city. The man said, "Go 3 days straight, and in the morning on the 4th day, turn left, and you will get to the city in half a day." So it was the way of explaining, giving directions in Siberia. What about the climate? Of course, it influenced Russian character. there are very big differences in climate all over Russia. Let's look at extremes. I'm a cone. You can see it on the map on the right, the planet pole of cold in eastern Siberia. About 500 people live there, they work there, they have some small industries there, and in winter the temperature drops to -95 Fahrenheit. Though, as another extreme, in summer the temperature can be very, very high, 95. It's interesting that that place became a very attractive site for tourists. One can buy a tour for $1,400 and travel there and enjoy these low temperatures and then boast the whole life about your experience. Another extreme, the hottest city, is Volgograd, former Stalingrad, which is in the Russian south on the Volga River. The temperature there in their dry summers can reach 118 Fahrenheit, which is again a paradox because everybody knows Stalingrad battle, where so-called General Frost helped the Soviet troops to defeat the Nazi army. In 1943, the temperature there dropped to almost -50 Fahrenheit. And of course, this nature and this extreme climate created certain very tough character. What about Russian forests? Everybody knows about unique dense forests Russian territory is covered with, and the travel in Russia because of this has always been extremely dangerous, and probably it helped to create a courageous and adventurous nature of an average Russian. You can guess that because of Siberian territory, Far East, Northern territory, Russian climate is not very good for agriculture. Actually, about only 10% of Russian territory is really can be productive in agricultural development and harvests. And even there, the bad harvest years are rather common. And this style of life, when it was impossible to predict the future, again emphasized in Russian character that habit to rely on good luck, lucky combination of circumstances, and of course the tradition not to plan too much for the future. It was reflected in Russian language a lot. And one of the great examples of this is a unique adverb in Russian language, avos. Avos, it's a good luck. And in the times of the Soviet Union, with its bad shortage of consumer goods and empty grocery stores, all people had in their pockets or in purses a little net bag called avoska, saying to each other in the morning, oh, avos, maybe, perhaps I will come to the grocery store and buy something. So maybe I will be lucky enough. And of course, it was very significant, even in the language, this lack of stability, that lack of predictable future, which also impacted Russian national character. And of course, certainly that bear was an important stereotype in many political cartoons, and both in past and in present. Russia was seen by its neighbors all over the world as a huge, aggressive, mean. Look at this claws, look at this mean expression on of that bear, aggressive bear. And in the 19th century cartoons, even in the 18th century cartoons, modern day cartoons, Russia was seen as that bear. Of course, Russian leaders were seen as aggressive animals at the same time. You can easily remember a few of them. Here I placed only those who are really well known. On the left you see Ivan the Terrible, then of course Joseph Stalin, less known Nikita Khrushchev, and of course well-known Vladimir Putin. These scary faces out of Russian history. A few examples. Ivan the Terrible. He was the longest ruler in Russian history, time-wise. He ruled 50 years and 105 days. And he was known for mass executions, punitive expeditions, even for casual murders of people and tortures. He killed his own son, simply in a family quarrel. Joseph Stalin, the man known for creating the system of forced labor camps, the gulags, for murders of thousands, maybe not millions of people, but thousands for sure. Historians still cannot agree how many people were executed during his reign. Nikita Khrushchev, more modern times, it's Caribbean crisis. It's, of course, his extravagant behavior in international affairs, like banging with his shoe during the meeting at the United Nations, some conference when he disagreed with some speech of some politician. It's his famous phrase, "We will bury you all." He said at some important summit meeting with delegations from all over Europe and the United States. So as a sign of protest, the people left the room and he was left almost alone there. And Vladimir Putin, who is not known for this a lot of big amount of victims, but of course well known for his unpredictable aggressive behavior, for suppression of any sign of inner opposition, for destruction of economic situation in the country. Right now in Russia, it's very high inflation and very significant decrease in the level of common Russian life. Like one famous poet and diplomat of the 19th century said, the Russian history before Peter the Great was a continuous burial service. And after Peter the Great, I'm going to tell about him a little later, Russian history has been the continuous case of criminality. However, there is some kind of paradox in Russian mind. In spite of all these facts, very well known and proved, all these scary faces of Russian politics, these rulers are still popular in Russia. For example, let's start from the modern day politician. Vladimir Putin's work as a president is approved by more than 80% of the citizens. And almost everybody would vote for him if the elections took place in the nearest future, like tomorrow. Let's go to Stalin. Let's get backwards. The number of people consider Stalin a good ruler reached its maximum for the last 16 years. According to polls of the previous year, about 50% of respondents think about Uncle Joe with a lot of respect and actually with good feelings. And this attitude caused another strange waves of unveiling the monuments to that bloody dictator. One of the examples, in a big northern port city, Arkhangelsk, another monument to Stalin was unveiled in December 2016. Let's go further, deeper in history. Ivan the Terrible, who can be more horrifying. But last year, in the big provincial city of Orel, a monument to Ivan the Terrible was unveiled, and it happened for the first time in Russian history. How can it be explained? In my opinion, it comes from the long-lasting tradition to rely on a strong leader, a strong centralized power, even if it is a tyranny. We cannot miss a very important factor which formed Russian character. Why are people so patient? Why are they so submissive? It came to Russian mind from Russian Orthodox Church. Religious factor was very important. There were 2 or 3 very important events in early medieval Russian state, which was called Kievan Russia. And the first one, directly connected to creation of this administrative vertical power, happened in 862, when the permanently fighting Slavic tribes decided to invite a foreign leader to rule. They got tired of that mess, they fought all the time, and they came to the Vikings and said, "Our land is very rich, but we don't have any order. Please come and rule over us." So they came and they started ruling, and it was the beginning of the first ruling dynasty, the Ruriks. And Ivan the Terrible was one of them. Religious affairs actually were more important. 988, Prince Vladimir selected the state religion for Russia, and he selected Orthodox Byzantine Christianity. He rejected all religion offered to him by official delegations. He rejected Islam. Because of some funny reason, everybody quotes Prince Vladimir. He said to the delegation from some Muslim country, you know, we cannot live without pork, we cannot live without drinking. Sorry, goodbye. But he accepted Byzantine Christianity, and historians say because of political reasons. He wanted to be independent from the papal, from Roman Catholicism. And he forced everybody, he ordered everybody to convert into Christianity. And a little bit later, the Russian Orthodox Church was in a great need of local saints. It was very significant who became the first saints. 2 martyrs, 2 saints, Boris and Gleb. They were 2 sons of Prince Vladimir, who died, and they were assassinated by their elder brother, who was thirsty for power, and he did not want any rivals. And they knew about this prepared assassination, but they did not resist. Though they could fight, but they decided not to, because they were believers, they believed in non-violence, they believed in being submissive to the elder, to the head of the family, and to the contemporary ruler, whoever it could be in their times. And when the Orthodox Church made them saints, it was the first example that everybody should be submissive to authority. Either it's the state or the family. And right now, it's a great revival of Orthodox Church. About 70% of the Russians consider themselves Orthodox Christians. And the government used that ideological vacuum created after the collapse of the Soviet Union, when people all turned to church for consolation, for spiritual support, moral support, and the government became an ally with the Orthodox Church. And the Church still teaches what it was taught and how it was taught in medieval times. The importance of non-violence in the society, the importance of submission to authorities. Of course, there are traces of paganism in spite of this Christian faith. Slavic tribes in that very far from us epoch when the Vikings were invited to rule, they were pagans. They were worshipping all kinds of spirits, deities, but surprisingly, right now, at present, it's also very popular, and people believe in house spirit, in water spirit, in forest spirit, in witchcraft, and in fortune telling. And almost 70, 80, 90%, according to different polls, I read about people believed in evil eye, and that they were even victims of somebody's witchcraft, magical actions. Of course, it's adding some measure of some features of being unpredictable and irrational to national character. Very important event happened on that stage when Russia was very small comparatively with the big Russian Empire, you know, now and existed before 1917. That Russian early medieval state with Kiev as a capital city was ruined by the invasion of the Tatar Mongol Empire in 1223. It started about 300-year yoke, and it had very bad and quite good consequences for Russia, which is a paradox. Let's start from bad consequences. Of course, the country actually ceased to exist as an independent and rich country it was before. It was a bad economic collapse because of high taxes Russia had to pay to the Golden Horde. And because of that, Russia fell very much behind Western Europe and even missed the Renaissance period. And what was good about this, though it's difficult to say anything about good, but it was something. Orthodox Church strengthened its position as a spiritual support and kind of a uniting center of the Russian nation. Russian rulers finally, during these long-lasting years of slavery under the Tatar Mongols, they came to the idea that only united they can fight and defeat the enemy. And unfortunately, the result mostly was negative, in spite of some positive features. The Sloan occupation ingrained very deeply in Russian mind a paranoid fear of invasions. And as you know from Russian history, it was reinforced later by numerous enemies trying to cut off a piece of Russian territory, like Napoleon invasion in 1812, German invasions during the First World War, Second World War, even Polish troops occupied Moscow for about 3 years in the 17th century. When Russia found itself with this paranoid fear of invasions, when the situation in the country, economic situation, improved a little, when the Tatar-Mongol occupation finished, came to the end, Russia got some resources to start building the building a bigger empire, using it as a buffer between the central part of Russia and the potential enemies around. You can see from these little maps I placed here and there about illustrating medieval state of Russia till the 17th century, how small Russia was. Probably it was only of size of France plus Spain, and how huge it is now. And what was the justification for expansion? For the sake of safety and, of course, enrichment. A lot of land, a lot of taxes, a lot of natural resources. And the first man who started that process was, surprisingly, Ivan the Terrible. He got money and he had a lot of resources to sponsor the expeditions to fight the Siberian tribes. And here on the left, you see one of the representatives of the rich merchants who also sponsored those Cossacks expeditions in Siberia, Alexander Stroganov. In modern times, this family is known only for beef stroganoff. Everybody knows, and supposedly that man was the inventor of that dish. Here it's another illustration, like a patchwork, how Russia was growing under different rulers. This piece was added, that piece, this piece, and this piece. Actually, Russia here is not big enough, because you know that fact that before Russia had Alaska, and it was sold in the 19th century to America. And such big empire, which of course this sense of huge territory, this sense of empire mentality, a little bit similar to Great Britain Empire of the times of Queen Victoria. It was very typical for the Russian of the 18th century and 19th century, and it's still there. And when Kiev fell, was seized, another centralizing nucleus appeared in Russian country. It was Moscow. And a very prominent ruler was at power at that time. It was Ivan III. Please don't mix him with Ivan the Terrible. Ivan the Terrible was his grandson. And Ivan III was well known for using this popular and, again, another mascot of Russian Empire, double-headed eagle. He inherited this coat of arms when he married to the niece of the last Byzantine emperor. It was the Paleolog's coat of arms. And he started and developed the idea of Moscow ruled Russia was the third Rome. What did it mean? It was extremely important for developing of Russian ideology. The first Rome was destroyed by heresy inside the church. The second Rome, the second religious center, Russia considered the Great Byzantine Empire. It was destroyed when the Turks seized the empire. So now it's a Russian mission, eternal mission, to be the third center of the purest form of Christianity. Not Catholic Rome, not Protestantism. Nobody can claim this role in protection and supporting the pure form of Christianity, only Russia. And it was a slogan, Moscow is the third Rome, and it will never be the fourth. This, of course, resulted in creating the feeling of superiority, the feeling of arrogance towards all neighbors, all Europeans, everybody around. Then Peter the Great came came to the historic arena, and he started a new epoch in Russian history. He was the first westernizer in Russian history. He tried to turn Russia into the new way and be together with Western Europe. He disagreed with all this Moscow the Third Rome idea, and he offered a lot of reforms, like educational reform. He encouraged personal initiative. He gave people by laws a lot of opportunities to climb up the social ladder. He restricted church power. And since that time, Russia was divided in mind into two parts. Those people who wanted to be together with Western Europe, and those who wanted to keep Russia as a unique Russian civilization, not the West, not Asian, like that symbol of double-headed eagle. One head is looking to one direction, the other hand is looking to an opposite direction. And this fight has been continuing since the time of Peter the Great. And still, if you ask somebody in Russia, who are you? Are you a Westernizer or Slavophile, the opposite group? People usually will give you a very definite answer, what way, what historical path of Russia they support. Another great Westernizer in Russian history, Catherine the Great, she erected a well-known in Russia monument, which is called the Bronze Horseman, as a memory about Peter the Great and his reforms. One of great Russian writers of the 20th century, Andrei Belый, wrote in his novel St. Petersburg, since that time, Russia had split in half, and Russia like a steed with two front hooves hovering over the darkness, the void, and two back ones firmly planted in the granite soil, which was a reflection of this division in Russian mind, where to go, by old Moscow way, or with Westernizers who wanted Russia on Western European road. And it's still not certain. As you can see, that horse is still in kind of a big jump, and nobody what is going to be in future. And of course, I'd like to present at least one example of Slavophiles among the Russian rulers who really influenced the country very badly. Nicholas I, he was extreme nationalist, he was extreme conservative, and he did not believe in any Western ways. And he and his government even developed the new doctrine, very much in Moscow style: orthodoxy, autocracy, and nationalism. And that was even offered to educational system, starting from elementary school. Everybody was indoctrinated with this philosophy, and of course it was forced by a lot of actions. Strict censorship, very severe punishment for any liberal ideas, for any Western style of ideas. He was very much afraid of a potential revolution in Russia. and he tried to suppress any movement for any liberal institution, creation of this institution, as much as he could. Not even in Russia, but in all Western Europe. He saw this as his mission. That is why he was even called Gendarme of Europe. And since that time, such features of national character as lack of initiative, of course, fear of being punished for not complying with authorities, these features were even deepened, unfortunately, and it's still in Russian character. Here you see a very well recognizable, easily recognizable character and some meeting in the Russian village. Why is it? Why is this opposite idea? You see, one of the very important factors forming Russian national character was slavery. Yes, we had our own form of slavery called serfdom. And it started very long ago, even on the stage of early medieval Kievan Russia. And then it continued to develop. It was becoming worse and worse and worse. People were sold, people were somebody's property, families were separated. It was the only difference maybe between American slavery and Russian serfdom. It was that all the serfs were the Russians. Nobody was brought from other countries. And those centuries of slavery created in Russian mind such strong fatalism that it's still there. Of course, one of the byproducts of that fatalism was alcoholism. Russia is known for as a way to escape reality. Certainly, another byproduct of this was absolute disrespect to any private property, private space, and individual. And there were some logical reasons behind it, not only slavery, but a long-lasting tradition in Russian village to decide everything as a community. People lived together with neighbors. Everything was decided in a patriarch way by the elders, and those who were poorer or younger, they had to obey. And this communal mentality, it was absolutely opposite opposite philosophy to this Western individualism, when people believe that one man can make a difference, one man can fight. Russian language again reflected that communal mentality, philosophy with different sayings. And one of the most known in Russia is that one man is not a warrior in the field. Never one man can win. As a popular way to see the opposite mentality, of course, these are the Hollywood movies showing all these individual characters who can defeat all bad guys, and the movie can finish with happy end. None of this kind in Russia. And of course, it only hardened international character, all these circumstances, the sense of inability for a single person to make a difference. Again, it's all about Russian fatalism. What was also important? Historians still cannot agree how many wars Russia had, wars and local conflicts during its history. Some said 70, I read about 128, but it was calculated in the 19th century. If we count all of them, maybe it will be about 150. And because of that history of numerous bloody wars, such feature in Russian character appeared as absolute indifference as to the value of human life. It became very low. And some examples I presented here. The 20th century, Russian Civil War. Red Army, the Communist Army, lost 700,000 people. White Army, a little bit less. Then, during the revolution, after the revolution, Red Terror victims, about 2 million. Civil War casualties, about 10 million. And Stalin purchase, 30 million people. And very well-known figure, it's World War II, 20 million people. And people lost all sense of real value of human life as a result of this. And here I even, it was my translation, I decided to translate of one poet of 1960s, Gennady Shpalikov. I think it reflects very well this kind of attitude. Either I will drown in the western Dwina, it's a river in northern west of Russia, or die anyhow else, my country won't grieve over me. And right now we can sum up. I try to open for you a few Matryoshka dolls. And I hope you saw some logic behind the Russian mentality, its forming, its development. I hope that you made some discoveries as to the factors which formed Russian national character, and maybe you can now combine all of them to create a portrait of an average Russian. And maybe today's presentation added something new to your knowledge about Russian character. And of course, this Matryoshka dolls image helped me a little, and we opened maybe about 7 of them, from 7 or 10. And but please, when you are trying to draw this this imaginary portrait of an average Russian and Russian mentality, please remember that in spite of this turbulent, tragic history, the Russians managed to survive. It speaks a lot. And they created a unique Russian civilization. You cannot deny that it's really unique. They showed examples of strong resistance to the circumstances, courage, and creativity. About creativity, you can give a lot of examples by yourself. Of course, everybody likes Pyotr Tchaikovsky and Fyodor Dostoevsky and Leo Tolstoy, great names of Russian art and literature. And remember, everything was done not due to, but in spite of. And together with Matryoshka doll, I decided to place another bear here. You see that bear in a kind of joyful environment, in a beautiful folk clothes, and with the Russian national string instrument balalaika. And this bear does not look very terrifying, I hope. Though that my favorite poet of the 19th century once said that Russia cannot be understood with the mind alone. No ordinary yardstick can span her greatness. She stands alone, unique. In Russia, one can only believe. Either you can analyze it, or you can use your love to Russian music, Russian architecture, Russian literature, analyzing, not only analyzing it, but also enjoying some spiritual gifts, spiritual investment of Russia into Western culture, world culture. But there is a hope that you can befriend that bear with its complex personality. Can you? Only you can give your own answer. And on this, I hope, a little bit optimistic note, I'd like to finish my presentation, and I will be very happy to answer your questions. And certainly, I'm very grateful for your attention and for your coming here and for your interest towards Russia and its mentality and national character. Thank you.
Wow, thank you so much, Dr. Francis. Very interesting. I do want to remind people, if you have questions, please go ahead and send them over to us by using the GoToWebinar dashboard. You'll see on the bottom there's a place for questions. And we do have a few questions for you. First, from earlier in the presentation, we had a question about the leaders and the way that you have them presented. And the question is, does the popularity of leaders take into account both any poll manipulation on the part of the leader and the effective negative media coverage in opposition countries? And he's curious whether, for example, is 83% accurate for Putin, and does the negative image U.S. media portrays for him make the values seem inflated?
Of course, the influence of mass media is very strong in these polls. It's obvious. It's like in any country. And right now, of course, we can blame television, we can blame radio, we can blame newspapers and the internet in popularization of these strong leaders of Russia of the past. They are considered now not some bloody dictators, but strong leaders who protected the country and who wanted only good for Russia, and they wanted Russia to be independent on the West, and so they had to fight all kinds of Western influences, even by very cruel methods. Yes, I agree that, of course, it's a big role of media in these strange and paradox-like results of public opinion polls, if it was the question about this, I hope. And I'd like to add that it's not anything new in Russian history, because the same picture, the same one could see in Stalin's times, when he created a cult of Ivan the Terrible, because he wanted to find somebody in the past of Russian state among the leaders who was cruel, but who was ruling with an iron fist, but could manage the country well, who could expand the country's territory, who could protect Russia in a very efficient way. And Stalin artificially, with cinema, with radio, newspapers, TV wasn't very much in use at the time, he created again another cult of Ivan the Terrible, and it's strange to see now in modern Russia very, very similar tendency.
Thank you. An additional question, was Russia democratic during Ivan III's reign?
No, Russia wasn't democratic. Some elements of some councils of nobility, they appeared a little bit later. The Russian rulers used the councils of high aristocracy, the boyars, to get an advice, but that time of course the rulers had a little group of people, some close relatives as a rule, some very rich people, they can discuss something. There wasn't any democracy at that time. The only example of late medieval times democracy was Novgorod the Great, but it was destroyed, any traces of it, by Ivan the Terrible during his punitive expedition, when of the population in Novgorod, it was about 30,000 people, 15,000 people were killed. And any trace of democracy was eliminated.
Okay, thank you. I think we have time for one more question, and it's, let's see, does Russia want to recreate a Soviet Union-like state?
I personally don't think so. But I see in Putin's international politics all this cutting off piece here and piece there. First, it's his inertia at his, because he was born in 1952. Of course, during the Soviet Union, he got used to the idea of a great empire in the Soviet style. I don't think I don't think he is going to do this, to recreate it. He's an intelligent man, but I think it's simply a tradition to create a buffer, to create a layer around Russia of some submissive territories with whom Russia, little state here, little piece here, with whom Russia can feel comfortable enough psychologically, and to get some maybe puppet-like governments like in Abkhazia or Northern Ossetia. But I think it's the same psychological trend to create a buffer around Russia. I don't think he really wants to recreate the Soviet Union.
Thank you. And thank you, Dr. Francis, for sharing your expertise and your time with us today. That's all the time we have for questions. I want to thank all of the attendees for being with us today. The webinar was recorded, and you'll be able to access it from the Henley-Putnam website on Friday. So again, thank you for all your questions and for attending today. If you do have additional questions, please feel free to email them to us, and we'll send them to Dr. Francis, and you can continue the conversation. So thank you, everyone, and we're ending the webinar.
Thank you. Thank you for your attention. Thank you. Bye.